Well, you'd want to track the conversion events because it will help your optimization better, right? So it will help Facebook learn, okay, this is a purchase, this is what an add to cart looks like, etc. So it helps that learning process for your advertisements faster because it helps understand this is what a person that does this on my site or on my store looks like. So that's a big one. It's centered on conversions and purchases right now is where you'd see it. And in the places that we've installed this, we've seen a 25 to 30% increase in conversion reporting.
You're listening to the eCommerce Influence Podcast with Austin Brawner and Andrew Foxwell. If you want honest, transparent, and tangible results that deliver lasting value and revenue, this is your podcast.
With SMS quickly becoming the most important marketing channel of the decade, many e-commerce brands are excited to get their piece of the pie. But with so many SMS tools popping up, it's hard to know which tool is the best fit for your growing brand. Postscript is a leading SMS marketing platform laser focused on one thing: building the best SMS platform for e-commerce brands on Shopify. Using Postscript, your team can grow a TCPA compliant subscriber list, use your Shopify data to create targeted text messages, campaigns, and automations, have two-way conversations with customers, and unlock a brand new marketing channel that drives big-time ROI for your store. Postscript is trusted by thousands of growing Shopify and Shopify Plus stores to manage their SMS marketing. Stop treating SMS like email and instead respect the inbox, create hyper-segmented campaigns using your data, and make your customers happy. Start your free 30-day trial of Postscript today at ecommerceinfluence.com/Postscript. That's ecommerceinfluence.com/POSTSCRIPT. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the eCommerce Influence Podcast. My name is Austin Brawner.
And I'm Andrew Foxwell. I'm really excited to talk about this today. Honestly, I think the topic is very timely and interesting. One that we've been seeing a little bit more discussion about, I would say, online amongst entrepreneurs.
Yeah, today I'm excited as well. Today we're going to be talking about building wealth, not about building a business, but about the stuff outside your business that you can do to build wealth. And what you talked about having conversations outside of the podcast, or this has come up because, at least the way I see it, is the reality is that most people running a business are not going to get that one singular exit that they're looking for that's going to put you, sitting on a beach at the Four Seasons for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's sort of like investment advice, and then there's things that you hear pieces of here and there, but it's very like market focused. And then there's like real estate people, and then there's like, I'm going to own a bunch of storage units, and there's like all these different things. And there's not a discussion necessarily about the long-term piece of it, I think, is kind of what you had said to me.
Yep.
So I'm excited to get into that.
I was ultimately inspired because I did a podcast recording with my wife on her podcast, the Doing It Different podcast. One of our best friends here in Austin, her name's Allegra Moet Brantley. She runs a company called Factora. Their goal is to help 1 million women become millionaires. And she talks a lot about finances. And as we went through the podcast, what I realized is that not enough people are talking about finances for business owners and what they can do outside of specifically building a business. And she's got some interesting buckets, right? So today we're going to talk a little bit about buckets of investments and buckets of assets and how to think about the long-term game, the power of compound interest, why you might want to think about diversifying out of just running your business. And we'll touch on some coming financial issues that I think many people might be concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. But first, shall we have a little disclaimer?
Yeah. I want to start and say I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a guy who's interested in this stuff. and I want to open up the conversation to a different way of thinking. So I'm just going to share my own personal experience, the way that I think about some of the stuff on this episode. So, feel free to take it for what it is and make your own choices. But yeah, the goal of this episode is really just to like share kind of my personal experience and how I'm thinking about the different buckets of investments and assets outside of business.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and get into it, talking about the overall goal of creating financial freedom.
I started thinking about this a couple of years ago, and one of the things I talk about in the coalition a lot and with clients is like getting clear, right? Getting clear with what you actually want, why you're doing what you're doing. And I think this can be really challenging if it's not something that you've practiced consistently. Like, why are you running a business? Why are you waking up every single day, working super hard, to what ends? And when I have conversations with my wife, we come back to this concept of financial freedom. That idea of financial freedom is different for everyone. And for us, it's like there's a very like specific number that we look at and we're like, all right, if we hit that number, we feel like we're going to be financially free. And it's in my mind, it's not like, okay, there's no freedom until that number, but it's just a number that we have in our mind. It's an overall goal that we look at, and we're trying to get there by a certain time. And so that's kind of the trajectory of where we're going, knowing that it's a goal and it's not something that is defining whether or not we're happy or successful, but something to shoot for.
Sure. So establishing, here's what I'm trying to go for. Here's what it means. Yeah, I think
Exactly.
that's true. A lot of people there's there's no real goal. I remember when we started working with a financial advisor 3 or 4 years ago, more in earnest, and they said to us, like, okay, and they went, when do you want to like retire, and what kind of lifestyle do you want to live in retirement? And we actually modeled it out. Like here's what you're going to need to be able to do that. Which is the first time I'd ever done that. It was mostly until that point, like, I think I should have a 401k, right? Or whatever.
Sure.
And I didn't have any number in mind. And now I know what that number is because they helped us establish that.
One of the big learnings I had from this other interview with Allegra was, the idea that personal finance is totally personal. Like, what is financial freedom for you? That number is different than for me and different from somebody else. And what retirement looks like for you and for me and for everybody else, that's different, right? So it's coming up with a very specific financial goal around financial freedom. And so the way that I look at that is, I have a date of when I want to be financially free, and a number. And when I look at like retirement, I see that as the idea of retirement to me is not necessarily that I won't ever work again. It's that it's the moment when I won't have to work again, and I can choose to make any decision that I want, not based on any sort of a financial pressure.
Sure. Yeah. So there's tenets of this, I think, that are, different pieces of how you kind of think about creating that. The first one of which is real estate you have down. Tell me more about how real estate plays into this.
Yeah. So, taking one step back, right? If we look at like, what are kind of the 3 ways that you can build wealth, right? And there's more like physical assets, and real estate is one of those. There's more paper assets, which are like investments. And when I say paper, it doesn't even mean paper anymore, because it's like cryptocurrency. I would put in that bucket as well. And the last one is business ownership and entrepreneurship. So those are kind of the 3 buckets that we'll talk about today. And I will dive into kind of my experience with real estate, because I think this is one that can feel super daunting as an entrepreneur if you are already running your own business. But I do think there's an opportunity here. And my own personal story with real estate before getting involved in real estate, the first step was to move from New York City to Austin, Texas. Just the barrier to entry of real estate in Austin, Texas versus New York City and Los Angeles is so much lower that it moves to being something that actually makes sense. About 5 years ago, we moved from New York to Austin, Texas, and we found an area that we wanted to be in. We bought a house, and we bought a house with a very specific plan. And that plan was a house that had a large enough plot of land on it to be able to create a second unit on it, and did some research into like the zoning codes to find that, okay, in this specific area of the city, we could create a unit in the back and have two houses on the same plot of land to maximize the return from that little piece of land. And taking it kind of a bigger goal here with real estate, like the overall goal is create financial freedom. And then my goal with real estate is to always pay a lower mortgage every time we move going forward. That's our goal. And the way we would do that is through rental income. So we moved in, bought this house, and moved into it. It's a 100-year-old home. And while we lived there, we got a construction loan to build a unit in the back on the same plot of land that we were ultimately going to move into. Construction loan, freaking awesome. You can get a loan on a property that you have designed or going to build. And it's all structured in a way to, they look at, make sure, okay, if you build this, is it going to be worth more than the loan? And okay, it is. Here you go. Here's your loan. And you can roll it into the mortgage at the end. So we built this new house. We moved into it. And then we rented out the first house. And the rent from the house that we bought initially pays for the mortgage of the house that we live in today.
Yeah, beautiful thing. It's absolutely a beautiful thing. I mean, real estate is always going to be one of those wealth outside of entrepreneurship things. And I think that when you get to, well, let me say this, instead of looking at it as getting to that point, it's more of that's kind of what we talked about in the earlier part. That's what you're building towards. I think that for a long time, I thought about it as, when we get to this point, then I will X. Right. But in reality, what I should have thought of it was like, I'm building and working this to be able to acquire a property that would allow me to do that. And, we're thinking about, the same thing. First of all, laws in the United States certainly are becoming more lenient on this, where the, urban density is becoming a thing and you can have more people on one piece of land. And I think that if you look at places like Airbnb too, there's opportunity where it democratizes that. Right. You can rent that out. And even in places that you wouldn't necessarily expect, in the middle of nowhere in some cases.
Sure. 100%.
Right? And so that's an interesting one that may not seem huge, but over time is massive, to not have the outlay of not only paying for the mortgage, but paying for the interest on that loan and on the mortgage.
And that's why, when I was talking about the overall goal of financial freedom, and then the individual goal under each asset class of like paying a lower mortgage, our goal is not it's to play the short game and the long game at the same time. So short game, generally coming from the business, where trying to increase income, grow revenue and profits from the business, and then use that to invest in some longer term resources. And I'm not a person that believes that like everyone has to buy a house. I don't actually believe that. I think in many places it doesn't make sense. If you're in New York City, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, it can be really hard to find good properties. I'm not like, there's people out there that's like, if you're renting, you're throwing away money. I don't believe that at all. I feel like in specific opportunities, there's specific places, an opportunity to create a valuable asset, and it's something to think about outside of your business. And again, you talked about Airbnb. That's kind of the next step of the plan, which is, all right, we moved into this new house. Our next step is to rebuild our front house, move back into that, and then Airbnb the house that we've been living in now. So then we've got, again, going with that same goal, pay a lower mortgage every time that I move. I think in real estate's been interesting. It's just like building a business. It's a learning process, how to build, how to work with contractors, but definitely something that I feel very happy to have added to my like toolkit. And it's one lever to move towards the goal of building wealth outside of just entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about investments. Like a lot of people I feel like invest and they, put money in the market or put money even in small businesses or something, but they don't necessarily have a goal in mind. Like what's your goal as it relates to investments, and what's a philosophy, how you think about it?
Well, back to the overall goal of creating financial freedom. One
Mhm.
aspect of that is, in my mind, is generating enough income from both rental income and investments,
Mhm.
that we can live off of it without needing to have, take any money from the business or from, ventures in entrepreneurship. That's ultimately the goal within investments for me. And the way that I, look at that, and this is again just personally, there's like two buckets. There's that I'm personally investing in the stock market, and then in cryptocurrency. And with the stock market, generally I'm primarily invested in index funds and have some stocks that produce dividends. So on the stock market, it's just like a consistent, okay, let's try to track the market, and then all right, have some stocks that produce dividends and kick off a little bit of income uh, that can lead towards the ultimate goal of generating enough income from the investments to live off of.
Yeah, I think index funds is a huge thing. That's a big bedrock of good investing, in my opinion. It's one that we have a lot of it as well. And then we also have, same thing, a lot of stocks. I'm very into tracking stocks that I know and understand well, and companies. I find that fascinating, actually, to be a part of it. And my goal with it is to take enough out of my income that it's meaningful, but not something I'm going to miss and long term invest. I never take money out. And because my goal is the same with you, right? It's creating that financial freedom. And so ours are that I would say my goal as it relates to is creating enough income I can live off of eventually. Right now, I'm not depending on that money. It's not something that's, it's doing fine. But the power of compounding interest and continuing to long-term invest in index fund and, go with the market, is going to, I think, continue to be a great way to, over time and over years, build wealth for sure.
And it doesn't have to be a crazy strategy that
No.
it's super overwhelming, right? Like we are seemingly living through an inflation event right now, right? Where we have money being printed and pumped into the overall market. And we've got the stock market hitting all-time highs. It's when we're recording this, it's pulled back a little bit. But the idea with all three buckets is that you're not sitting on a bunch of cash that is losing value while you have it, right? So pegging it to the stock market is one way that I'm looking at trying to offset this potential inflation event.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and again, it's super like getting started. So if all you do is go to like Wealthfront or get like a robo advisor, and you can set up an account in like 15 minutes and have some sort of an IRA, either a traditional or a Roth IRA, and start contributing to that and then have another account that is just not tax advantaged, but your own trading account. You can get that going in like literally 15 to 20 minutes, and kick off like a couple $100 a month, right? And I started automating this so that there's a really great book called "I Will Teach You to Be Rich" by Ramit Sethi, and he talks a lot about the power of automations. So on the investment side, we have automations happening, so it's automatically moving money from income into accounts to be invested before I even see it, right? And this is controversial a little bit in like the entrepreneurial community, because there are some people who are like, I just want to bet 100% of myself. That's where I have the highest leverage.
Right.
I don't believe that. I think that's great to invest in yourself and put 90% of your time and energy towards your business, but do the very simple things to automate some investments so that in case things don't work exactly the way that you expect, because newsflash, they typically don't. Spoiler alert, running a business is really, really hard. And sometimes it doesn't end up the exact way that you want. And it's decisions over a lot of time that will get you in the right direction of building more wealth. So all I'm saying is take the 10% of time to focus on investments. And speaking of that, the other bucket personally that I look at is cryptocurrency. I look at cryptocurrency as like a hedge. I'm not actively trading anything. I don't have time for that, to be honest, just like running a business, and I don't have time for that. But I do look at it as like a very small percentage of my portfolio is in cryptocurrency. And I look at that as an opportunity, a hedge in case something happens that is world changing with cryptocurrency. I want to be involved. And that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's spreading things out. It's not having everything in one place. That's my opinion on this. Real estate is a way to build towards it, that builds wealth. That's a way to spread things out. And investments, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as what an index fund is. Follows the market. And cryptocurrency is a hedge that you have on it, right? For me, my hedge is a lot of small to mid cap companies that I spend 10% of my time looking into, and I throw, $200, $300 to invest in that company. Like, that's my hedge. And so I think it's spreading it out. It's trying to learn, trying to figure it out. And cryptocurrency is a great one, right? Because cryptocurrencies, there's stability, but there's also wild swings as part of it. So it's like, it could be huge, and it's not like you're over leveraged there or anything. It's an opportunity.
My thought process is if I lose everything I have in cryptocurrency, I don't care, right? I don't care at all. It's only for the upside that Bitcoin goes to like $1 million, and I'm a part of that. That's my idea on it. And again, people have totally different views on cryptocurrency, and it is super volatile, but that's been my thought process on it. It's like, I just want to be involved and tracking, because again, what you track and what you're involved with, generally you pay a little bit more attention to. I want to shift a little bit to business and the third bucket, right? Because most people listening here are going to either own their own business, or they are probably working for like a startup, and their income is coming from the work that they do. Again, when I look at the bucket of entrepreneurship and business, my goal is to acquire like income generating assets that later on I can sell. And this has not always been the way that I thought about it, right? Initially, I was thinking, just like, I think this is quite common, right? When people start a business, they're like, if I could generate $10,000 and live anywhere, $10,000 a month and live anywhere without working, I would be happy. Right. And I think that is like such a powerful vision it gets people from $0 to $10,000 a month living anywhere. Because that's a hard thing to do. And if you've done that, good for you. Because not everybody can do that, right? It's like the 4-hour work week type of vision.
Right.
But where my thought process around entrepreneurship or business now is, how do I continue to build different assets that continue to grow with or without my input?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I put myself in a position that in the future I have an ability to acquire more of those? So basically have like 3 main things I'm working on. So one of them is brand growth experts,
Mm-hmm.
right, which is our membership community. We do
Mm-hmm.
coaching and training.
Mm-hmm.
We have about 300 e-commerce entrepreneurs in there. And that is like the primary place I spend time. And it's freaking awesome because I love doing it. I love connecting and learning from so many different business owners, helping them grow. And it's just like something I'm super passionate about. It generates income. And my goal eventually is that at a certain point, I'll be able to sell that. I need to do some work to be able to move myself from being like the face of it to not being the face of brand growth experts and having it more of a standalone type thing. But that is the strategy there, is to generate income. And also it is a place that helps provide opportunities for the future. And what I mean by that is like, that has been something over the last year that I've got more involved with, is revenue share partners. So
Mm-hmm.
finding businesses who are growing, who I feel like myself and my team can help grow faster, and getting involved on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
So getting involved in a partnership level. And ultimately it's like identifying the people and the businesses that I am super aligned with and going much, much deeper with them.
I love that. Right. It's something that does it multifaceted, right? Because you learn about it, you're connecting with people, then you're building, then it's you're generating income from people being part of the program, and then being involved in helping their businesses grow further. And they love that, with the rev share, because you're there, you're more invested. That's huge for them. Think about it. To them, it's like a shortcut in some cases of having
100%.
your expertise as part of the team, which is a huge leg up. So I think that's a big one. So that's one part of it. What are some other parts of it?
So I look at that as like, okay, back to the goal of acquiring income generating assets that can later sell. So I'm looking at that as a win-win, where find these companies and help them reach their goals faster, right? And often, if you're running an e-commerce business, it's like there's typically 2 types of entrepreneurs that I come across. The ones that have an idea for a brand
Mm-hmm.
that they want to take to like $100 million.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, I got this brand. I want to take it to $100 million and I want to sell it. I want to go the like Pura Vida movement blenders
Yep.
vision.
Yep.
Then there's the other side of entrepreneurs I work with who they want to build a portfolio. And they're like, I think we've got one brand here that has, we've hit 3 million a year or 5 million a year. We think it can go to 10 million. And I want to build a portfolio of like 10 of these brands.
Sure.
At like $10 million
Sure.
each.
Sure.
I got my formula.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think both of those are awesome ways. I lean more towards the portfolio side of things, where I'm like, okay, let's build something that is awesome, stable. If you put them all together, your multiple typically increases.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking about that as an opportunity. And I think that's a place that if you're running a business right now, you can put your mindset towards. If you're running a business that doesn't have the legs to get to 100 million, because not all of them do. But you still can build a $100 million asset if you bring multiple companies together under like a holding company.
Yeah, but it's a diversification strategy as well. It's very similar in what we're doing too. I mean, I think we have the referral network as part of it of our trusted agencies. We have the course revenue that we have in courses that we build, and then we have consulting and services revenue, and some partnership rev share stuff too. So for a long time, it was management. That's what we did. We were running like a traditional Facebook agency. And then
Sure.
what I was thinking is like, like, what can I do that's different here? And now this year we've started to do a little bit with Shopify apps and thinking about that, right? And it may not be huge, but it's something. And that I think is a big part of it. If you run a product, there's one guy that I know that I think is really smart, great brand owner. And I said to him the other day, he was saying it's really tough. They're getting a new director of operations. And I said, what if you started your own community of business owners of just 5 or 6 people, but $1,000 a month to those business owners, because people are emailing him anyway. Like he's already spending the time doing it. So he's like, yeah, I guess I could think about that. Like that's the kind of stuff that is a diversification of what you're already doing, and that as it relates to entrepreneurship and business, what are you already doing that you have expertise in that maybe other people would be interested in learning about? And you don't have to go a huge community on it. Somebody the other day said to me, if you used your newsletter, Andrew, and you just recorded it as a podcast, I would pay $5 a month for that. Well, that's interesting. You get, I don't know, you get a certain amount of people to do that. That's something we could do fairly easily that we're already doing. So, I don't know. I'm thinking about that kind of thing. Like, what are these kind of spider webs off?
One thing I've learned from Drew Sanaki, and he's been on this podcast multiple times talking about this, is that whatever your skills are and you're doing them at a certain level, you can do those skills at a different level and have outsized returns, right? So, and to put that in different terms, if you're really, really, really good at generating sales from paid social, or really, really good at building systems for email marketing and acquiring repeat customers through that, and you're doing it at a scale with a business doing $3 million a year, if you do that for a business that isn't doing it, that does 30 or 300 million a year, your returns are so much larger at that level, but the input isn't that much different. And that's where it gets interesting and exciting, and things I'm thinking about. It's like, how do you take the skills that you've got and move them to a different scale and create outsized returns for that? Because if you look at your 3 buckets, like, and your goal of financial freedom, that's where you're going to hit the, back at the beginning, I was like, not the chance of hitting this golden parachute exit puts you with pina coladas at the Four Seasons for the rest of your life, which I don't even want, but like that vision, right? For people is there. That is a low percentage thing, where if you can consistently hit singles and doubles and continue to grow your assets, well, then by the time you're 45, 50 years old, you might be in a position where you have, I'm saying that for me because I'm at 34 right now. Anyway, that's kind of my thought process, which is like, hit singles and doubles, move the chains forward to, like, just use all the sports analogies and go in all those different directions. And one of the things that has been really helpful has, a couple of years ago, I started this process of every single month, at the end of the month, I go through and do a net worth tracker. So I go through all assets and I physically put them in by hand, and I track month over month with our specific financial goal. I track our progress, and that process every single month, looking at it, makes me a lot more cognizant of the decisions that we're making.
Yeah, it reframes it for sure.
It reframes it, because it's like, okay, every single month I know this is the timeline that we've got towards our goal, our, like, quote unquote retirement goal, which is by age 50. And so I'm like, okay, let's keep working towards this, put those numbers in. And that's been a really helpful process.
Yeah. Oh, I think anytime you can look at it and say, and a monthly basis or even every other month and say, here's where we're at. Here's how we're tracking. I mean, it's huge because otherwise you just like, you don't know. And what are you going towards? So to even watermark that is massive to get an idea. So yeah, I completely agree.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. One takeaway is if you're not doing anything on the investment side, the lowest barrier to entry is to take like $500 or $250 of your income, maybe even just $100 of your income, and set up like a wealth front account or there's a bunch of robo advisors, but they're all pretty comparable, super low fees. Set it up, put some money into it, and contribute consistently for a few months and get that process going. Everyone has their own view on this, but I am firmly not in the camp that the only thing you should be doing is 100% investing every dollar in your business.
Right.
Just pull a little bit out and get going and build some repetition in this. So that's my takeaway.
Yeah,
hopefully.
I agree. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
All right, here we go. Well, it don't matter, you got money. You ain't got no soul.
Hey guys, it's Austin. And if you've been loving the podcast, you got to go check out brandgrowthexperts.com. That's where I work one-on-one with my clients to help them build faster growing, more profitable online stores. I've got coaching programs and workshops that we host all over the world. Would love to have you come check it out. If you're a fast growing e-commerce business or you want to be a fast growing e-commerce business, you got to check it out. That's the spot for you. We go more in depth than we do in the podcast with comprehensive trainings and coaching to help you scale up. Check it out, brandgrowthexperts.com. See you there.